Welcome to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. How do we learn to truly thrive together? How do we stay connected to our authentic selves, each other, and our purpose as a team, especially when challenged? How do we unlock the deeper levels of group intelligence? Enjoy this episode of the Connected Teamwork Podcast and learn practical tools to evolve the connectedness of your team to its next level.
Welcome back to Rooted and Unwavering Connected Teamwork Podcast, episode 65, where we help leaders and teams get more into their innate potential and connection. And today we're going to talk about the fourth of the 12 team connectedness practices, which is be present and be authentic, and really speak from your truth. And I'm very glad to do this with my co-host Carson today. Carson, how are you today?
Hilke, I'm always better when I'm with you. So I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How are you, my friend?
I am doing well. And this practice of being present is so underrated. I always asked in the beginning of a workshop, on a scale from 1 to 10, how present are you right now? Where 10 is as present as you would be when you held your first newborn, if you had one of those in your arms, or when you were with this person that you wanted to ask for a date. You really wanted to ask that person, or you're in the middle of nature and you're in awe, just in this moment, and there's no past, there's no future, there's just this moment, a sense of presence. That's a 10. And 1 is no judgment. I'm totally somewhere else. I'm in the last to-do list. I am in the last meeting, in my current judgment of somebody, in my last, whatever's going on with me, that's where I'm at. That's not being present. That's being present at 1. Carson, how is that for you when you are present at 10? What's your experience?
Oh my goodness. I mean, the way you describe that, I'm thinking about holding, newborn children. That is a whole nother kind of presence. And it's funny because of the world that we're in. We're always being pulled in so many different directions, and there's always so many notifications and stressors and points of anxiety, and it's very challenging to be that level of present because of the expectations, both that are put on us externally or that we put on ourselves, and some of those pressures, but also just the different masters that we sometimes serve, right? So I don't think you could have said it any better. I think about that feeling that perhaps we get when we're on vacation and we're sitting out on the beach with our family and there's not a care in the world. Those moments I'm very, very present. Compare and contrast that to a normal work week when, my inbox is being littered and my instant messages are on the rise. It's very frenetic, and it's almost like we're bouncing from one thing to the next. We got to find balance, and we're going to discover some of that today.
Yeah, and that sense of almost learned freneticism and obligations and things that we have in our heads, that seems so common. So what we're used to, and what we're used to, we go back to. And so part of this practice is to create a different muscle of what we're used to. So what would it be like? Imagine for a moment if we were able to be present, maybe not all day, but most of the day. And you might say, or one might say, oh, that takes a lot of work. And you can ask yourself, well, yeah, maybe just like with any new habit, if it takes a lot of work, that probably means that we're not very used to being present. And then if we're out of that habit and we can maybe work with that habit and find another way, then presence might become something we're unconsciously skilled in. And wonder what that would be like if we were really in that place. So, Carson, what is your experience in your practices and your practicing and being intentional about being present? How do you go about it?
I love the question. And, I also want to spend some time with you as a follow up to really unpack why this is so important to connectedness, why this is one of the connected principles. When I think about this one, Hilka, I've been doing a lot of reading, and especially in the new year, I've spent a lot of time in life and career really trying to master my trade and master my craft, around selling and around leadership, where I've spent the preponderance of my time. And I'm being very intentional this year in investing in the relationships that matter most. And so when you think about being present is not only prevalent or a prevalent priority when we're in our career and we're in our day to day, and perhaps we're in a meeting or we're talking to someone that is a colleague or a collaborator, but it's also very important in any relationship that we value. And I'm thinking about it right now as far as really working on mastering relationships this year, both with my spouse, but also with our kids. And, furthermore, how can I maintain or gain, peace and presence in stillness? I hit kind of a brick wall recently, a lot of noise and a lot of change, happening in our environment and in our world and with my team. And without going into sometimes our foundation can get a little bit rocked, and it's important to lean into that, not to shy away from it, but to lean in and really understand why, which demands that we are still and that we are present in those moments. I picked up an audiobook a couple of weeks ago. It was Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday, and it really talks about these pressures and these challenges that are all over the place. There's some interesting character study on leaders from JFK to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And really how amidst all this chaos, they were able to find stillness and be present in these moments when there were differing opinions and viewpoints and chaos. And it's really fascinating to me how we can lean into those moments. And there was a quote that resonated with me that I've kind of been kicking around in my head, that your freedom of choice is in the space between the stimulus and your response is your one true power. And what I take from that is things are always going to be transpiring. How we react and respond, or if we react and respond, and what we react and respond to is our freedom of choice. And so becoming judicious and intentional in that is what is helping me get more focused on being present. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and then also why is this so critical when it comes to connectedness principles?
So presence to me is the basis of it all. Like if we are not here, then nothing happens. I mean, our minds still go, but nothing really happens. Like the things that we look back on later, like, yeah, that's what counted, typically happen when we are in the moment, right? So we spend a lot of time being out of the moment. And so why is it so important to be present for connectedness is because also when we're present, we are in reality. And to connect to ourselves, to each other, and to our purpose, which is what connectedness is about from my perspective, we need to be in reality. We need to be here, right? We need to be totally here. So why did we make it one of the 12 team connectedness practices is because what I noticed with teams is that distraction is more common than not, and stillness is the exception. So why does an author talk about JFK and Martin Luther King, and people always talk about Mandela or Gandhi? Because those people are, in a way, the exception in some way, right? And they don't have to be famous for that. So it's a principle because it is a skill that we got to learn. Like breathing oxygen is not a team connectedness practice, although breathing deeply is one. Why? Because we're naturally not doing it. So we put these principles up there as reminders, like be present. Just remind us to get out of the delusion of not being present. And so when I think about being present, it brings me face to face with myself, with the people around me, with the issues at hand. And for a while, I confused presence and peacefulness with quiet. And the leaders you just discussed, Carson, in your life and my life is not exactly quiet, right? There's inboxes and, in your case, kids and clients for both of us and colleagues and a world and all of us that are listening. We have all these stimuli. So peacefulness and presence is not excluding these things. Then it becomes a militant peacefulness, which I've also practiced. Like I've got to have things totally still, otherwise I cannot be peaceful. That's called conditional, or I call it militant peacefulness. It's conditional peacefulness. This is about finding the wherewithal to be unconditionally present. As one Zen monk said, to become intimate with the 10,000 things, to be totally here. And that requires courage because we're not used to it. It requires vulnerability because we have to open ourselves to also the things we don't want to feel. It's not all bliss, all happy. That gives us strength and something we can lean back on. So to you, question, Carson, when you feel challenged and you choose to become present, what's your experience? What happens when you feel challenged and you choose to become present? What is your experience?
So this brings up a lot of, frankly, some of our previous conversations, but also, goes back to taming your crocodiles. And it's the acronym WATCH, and it's walk above the chaos humbly. And I know humility and also authenticity are a big part of this principle. We'll get to those shortly. But for me, I have a couple of analogies that I'll leverage here. So hopefully I can paint a picture. My wife and I have this tradition every Valentine's Day. So we watch the movie For Love of the Game with Kevin Costner. It's a baseball movie. Mm-hmm. And when he's standing, it's a pitcher for the Detroit Tigers. He's standing on the mound and he has this thing. He says, clear the mechanism. He's in the middle of Yankee Stadium. It drowns out all the noise, all the hecklers, the jeering, the fans, everything. And it enables him to intentionally be laser focused on executing, doing his job. Now, for me, like presence applies personally and professionally. I think there is an element of clearing the mechanism, but there's also an element of being in touch with your authentic self, being able to acknowledge and embrace and accept sometimes the wave of feelings or emotions that may come through, acknowledging them for what they are. There's ebbs and flows and rises and falls in those tides, and these things will come and go. Not clinging to the past, not making decisions based on the past. The past is a teacher, but it isn't the end all be all. We don't live there. And all the more important reason of being present. So in the reality, Hilke, I try to shrink my bubble and shrink that moment to what it is. Not having blinders on, but being able to walk above the chaos humbly. Who's impacted in this moment? Who might be impacted by how I react and respond? What other emotions and feelings are at play? Sometimes in the past, my short-sightedness has been my focus on myself and how the situation makes me feel. And, sometimes that can cause us to react out of a place of anxiety or anger or pain. And we can't do that. We have to give it that moment, give it that beat, find the stillness, and realize that there's other people that are involved and there's ramifications to our decision. However we react and respond, it's going to have ramifications, and we've got to be mindful of everything that could be impacted by that choice. I'd love to hear from you, your thoughts on that piece, but also as we kind of go into the authenticity element. I know we've got a break coming up, but as we think about the authenticity component of being present, how does that resonate for you?
I love what you said about shrinking the bubble, because the mind, I heard described this weekend by somebody, our brain primary function is survival. So if we rely on whatever happens up here to stay in the moment, we're not going to do it because we're always like thinking about what happened or what's about to happen. Survival mechanism, right? Evaluating and looking, projecting in the future.
An amygdala
Thing, right? That's so we've got to go a little deeper. And I find breathing deeply into my body as a great instrument in helping others do that too. Because so much of our breathing is a function of not being present, which is shallow. We have shallow presence and shallow breathing, and we can go to deep belly breathing. Maybe if you're listening, do it for a second and just notice that there's a space inside, deep inside of our body that is open and present. And so we can create and build a physical reminder in our body, in our belly, to be present no matter what. And so it is not just mental, it actually goes down. As you said, the other side of the coin of presence is authenticity. Because once I become very still, just like when I'm looking at the still lake, it's very clear. Like insight and truth kind of happens naturally. It's like, oh, that's what's going on. So we're going to take a break in a moment and take a look at how do we then use that and make that practical in a team setting, because we're not in a monastery or a meditation room in a team meeting. We are having conversations with each other. So it's when I'm present, how do I speak from presence authentically? How do I do that? So that's what we're going to discuss after the break. See you in a minute.
You are listening to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Do you want to learn more about building the next level of connectedness in your team? Please contact Growth Leaders Network on LinkedIn. And now, back to the show.
So Carson and I are talking about presence. Carson talked about shrinking your bubble. And we're going to look at how to be authentic. And I want to introduce an acronym for that, because especially in the middle of conversation, somebody disagrees with you, somebody says something that may disappoint you, or you see an issue differently, you have another piece of information, you're excited about something and other people not getting it. Happens. Life of teams happens. Question is not whether it happens, it happens. So how do we deal with that? How do we stay present? So we can stay present, and a way to give that some flow, because a good present leader creates a lot of flow, is for me to go to the beach, the acronym BEACH, which is breathe in the belly breathing, and encourage yourself, saying yes, because when we're in conflict, our survival brains are like, no, encourage yourself. Of course, you're having feelings. It's okay. Accept where you are and accept what other people are. They may disagree with you. They may not like it. You may feel a little nervous about bringing something up. You may have some judgment about the other person that you're still in the midst of, you'd like to let go of, but you don't quite know how to do this. You're human. Accept your humanity and the other person's humanity, the mess of it all. So then we get to C, which is for choosing and committing. Commit to a different way. As you said, going from reaction to response, going to some deeper truth. What's really going on? What's really going on? And then the H stands for higher intelligence. So breathe, encourage, accept, choose and commit, higher intelligence. And so the higher intelligence, I get there by being present and asking myself, on this, what's really at stake for me, for myself? What might be going on for the other person in our relationship, the we, and what might be going on for what we're working on. And I look for, I sit with that. It's like, okay, what might that be? And then I aim to say it with Zen speak, not too many words. If I speak more than one paragraph, I'm probably out of it. What do you think?
You have a line in the kind of the pre-show notes in the book, and it really jumped out at me, that I think also speaks to the importance of not approaching these situations from a place of judgment. of either ourselves or of those that we're collaborating with. And that line is this: it's we express ourselves with respect, not going into judgment. We simply own our experience, interpretations, opinions, requests, and promises without making anyone wrong. And I think that's really important to anchor on, because right, wrong, or indifferent, or wherever it's coming from, whether it's ourselves or from an external force, there's pressure, right? There's pressure to react and respond. And I can speak for, my younger days, early in my leadership career, is that a lot of times I felt inclined to react and respond quickly. I felt like there were eyes on me to make a decision, to be wise, or to, the quicker I could jump to a decision, the better, because it showed that I was decisive. But frankly, that's not the case. The case is to go in and be able to uncover the vantage points of all of the other players. And frankly, Hilke, I think by default, some of the themes and things that we're discussing today are not as prominent as they should be in our world. There's not enough people that are going out and seeking to understand and really trying to understand the vantage points of everyone who's impacted by major decisions. And even in our own world, some of these decisions, that they may seem small in the moment, but the way that your decision or your tone of voice, or the way that you react and respond to these things, can land differently on the people that you care about and the people that you collaborate with. So for me, it's all about slowing down that moment, but also making sure that you're not making assumptions, that you're not seeking to judge yourself or anyone else.
So being authentic, Carson, is not making another person wrong. Authenticity for you includes being deeply empathetic. Like I'm being authentic means also I really want to know honestly what you think. That's also being authentic. And then there's another side of authenticity, because there has to be balance. I heard somebody say this as, I want to listen and express with equal strength. I want to listen and express with equal strength. So I want to listen to you. At the same time, I'm not stopping there, because then I have all this, perspective and talent that I'm not putting to use. There's a perspective that needs to be shared. So then I ask myself, on a scale from 1 to 10, how honest am I right now? And I go a little deeper in myself and say, okay, so what do I really care about on the I, we, and the it? So I give an example. Team members doesn't do what I want them to do, right? So my crocodilian reactive self might try to judge them, like, oh, you're not doing what I want to do. You're such a loser. All that. I mean, really terrible. Not say that, but something like that. The authentic truth might be something like, hey, Mary, I'm feeling concerned. I really care about this team and about our performance together and how we serve clients. And I've noticed that our accountability in terms of delivering things seems to be on a scale from 1 to 10 around a 3 between the two of us. And I can give you examples and we can talk about that. And I'm also concerned about that because, to me, accountability is part of trust in our relationship. And I really do enjoy working with you. So let me pause there, Mary. How does that land with you? So notice I just used I statements. I didn't say you did this or you make me feel anxious. I said, I feel anxious. I feel concerned. I have a stand. And then I broke my own rule. That was probably 3 paragraphs. So Zen, need to do some more work on this. How can I say this in 1 paragraph? And then go to the question. Mary, what do you think?
It's tremendous. I love the way that you frame that up in a way that you have to have a solid foundation for the conversation to be productive. And frankly, when you make a statement, when you make a you statement, these things can come across as accusatory, or they can put people on the defensive. One of the things that I'm doing a lot of, my my wife recommended a book to me, and so that was that immediately goes to the top of my queue, right? It's called Secure Love by Julie Manano, and it's really all about the different types of attachment styles, and how some can be, obviously the goal is to have a secure attachment in any relationship. That could be business or personal. But, there are often anxious attachments, and these can be intrinsic from experiences that we've had growing up, just like being an avoidant attachment. But really with an anxious attachment, it's all, I don't want to be the problem. I don't want to have caused this issue. And so, I often hear or look for things that may sound like I messed up. And those are the types of things that send me into my brain and into a spiral. On the other hand, avoidant, where it's like it's fight or flight. I'm going to, in essence, engage and defend myself, get really defensive, or I'm just going to shut down and go off and do my thing. And really what it's all about, Hilka, is in those moments, you've got to create fertile ground for having a collaborative, present, authentic conversation. And you can't do that without leading in that way yourself. And so by sharing that vulnerability, by sharing those concerns that you have, and frankly, where I've had success in these situations as well is offering up experiences that I've had in the same case. I've had some challenging conversations recently with team members who are having difficulty collaborating. It's a good problem to have sometimes, where you have people that are very strong-willed and feel very, passionate about their roles, but sometimes they don't come together effectively. They're just coming from two different vantage points. Their goals are the same. We want to win. We want to succeed. We want to deliver for the client, but they're coming about it in different ways, and they're talking over each other. And just finding that realization of, frankly, as a leader, being able to offer up, hey, I've been in situations like this. And what helps me is, getting past myself, being past the ego and the award chasing and all those things. Like, that has helped me tremendously in realizing that if I can elevate everyone else around me, and I can lead from a place of authenticity, but also empathy, understanding where they're coming from, the viability of us going forward together goes up exponentially. And that's the important thing when we create that fertile ground for an authentic conversation, but also we don't put people on the defensive. We're not always going to know maybe the trigger areas or the hot buttons for people. But as we learn people over time, we want to really understand, how do we best get this person in the boat with us so that we can row together?
Yeah. I love the words fertile ground, right? And part of that is also that doesn't become manipulation, because it's like, oh, how can I say this so that you will go along, or that you like me, or that you'll do what I like? Nope. It's also choosing to be present no matter what. And it goes back to where we started this conversation today. Like, presence is a choice, and it's a gift, because when also the other people know that I will be present with you no matter what you say, that creates safety and a sense of invitation. It's like, this room that I bring with presence is big enough for all of us, including our very different opinions. So we're getting to the end of this conversation again, Carson. What would you say to somebody that is just totally not present and doesn't know how to get there right now?
I have a good friend of mine who has a line that he instilled in me, and it's be where your feet are. And it's very similar to what you said earlier, Hilka. Sometimes we got to slow it down, and we got to shrink it down to realize this is, where I am in this moment. And as hard as it is to give your undivided attention to something or someone, it's worth it. These are all investments that we're making. And you can only control so much, but you can control your effort. You can control your attention and where you choose to invest your time, which is the most precious resource. And so when I think about being present and the importance of being present, and also how to do it when it feels very challenging to do so, slow it down, shrink it down, be where your feet are, make sure you're really soaking in the person or the people that you're sitting across from, and understand what what's a desirable outcome of this interaction from not only your vantage point, but also especially theirs? And if you're very intentional and you approach these situations with an open mind and you're not judgmental, the likelihood of that becoming a fruitful discussion, collaboration, and relationship goes up exponentially.
So I leave that here then for the listeners. Be where your feet are. Just practice that right now. Notice where your feet are. What would it be like to be where your feet are right now? Be in this moment right now, without judgment for the pieces that parts of us that don't really like to be here, that maybe have other ideas. Fine. And you choose to come back. We choose to come back, be present in this moment. Thank you for listening. You've been listening to the Connected Teamwork Podcast, episode 65. Hope that you found something that builds greater connectedness with yourself, with others, and with your purpose in a team setting. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Take a moment to reflect on what you learned today that can help build your team. Also, if you like, think about one of your team members and what you appreciate about them. Let them know. Enjoy connecting more deeply to what is great about them. And see you next time at the Connected Teamwork Podcast.